Hello, we welcome you to the program today. We're studying Job chapter 23. So if you would, turn your Bibles to Job 23 and let's begin. Verses 1 through 7, Job seeks access to God. Verse 1, Then Job answered and said, This is the beginning of Job's response. Job 23 to 24. And this is the beginning of Job's response for the third round. And this is Job's eighth speech. Verse 2, Even today my complaint is bitter. My hand is listless because of my groaning. Job admits his complaint has been bitter. This may refer to how he has complained to God in his anguish and in his bitterness. Job 3:20, 7:11, 9:18, and 10:1. His hand is listless. This is also translated as heavy in Job 33:7. His hand being listless is due to his groaning, his sighing and misery. Job 3:24 to 26. For my sighing comes before I eat, and my groaning pour out like water. For the thing I greatly feared has come upon me, and what I dreaded has happened to me. I am not at ease, nor am I quiet. I have no rest, for trouble comes. For my sighing comes, he said in Job 3:24. The same word, sighing, is found here in this passage as groaning. Verse 3. Oh, that I knew where I might find him, that I might come to his seat. Job wishes that he knew where to find God so that he might come to his judgment seat. It's not as though Job was trying to avoid him, not at all. He was trying to seek him, to find him. Verse 4. I would present my case before him and fill my mouth with arguments. Job would present his case before God and give arguments, his reasoning before God. He wants a fair trial. Verse 5. I would know the words which he would answer me and understand what he would say to me. Job believed that if he was able to come to God's seat, verse 3, and present his case to God, verse 4, then he would know the words that God would say to him and he would understand. Verse 5. And so we see his confidence. Verse 6, he says, would he contend with me in his great power? No, but he would take note of me. Job says that God would not need to contend with him in his great power, the great power of God. God would only need to take note of him, to give attention to him. Job simply wants a fair hearing from God. Verse 7. There the upright could reason with him, and I would be delivered forever from my judge. Job believes that he is upright, and he wants vindication. He thinks that if only he could come to God's seat and reason with God, that he would be delivered. He is confident that he would be delivered or acquitted by God, his judge. In verses 8 to 12, we see Job is confident in his innocence. Verse 8. However, despite what he has said, Job cannot find God in verses 8 and 9. He searches in every direction, east, west, north, south, all to no avail. Job says that he goes forward, but God is not there. He goes backwards, but he cannot perceive God. Verse 9. When he works on the left hand, I cannot behold him. When he turns to the right hand, I cannot see him. Job says that when God works on the left hand, he cannot behold him. He cannot see him. Job knows that God is working despite not being able to see him. When God turns to the right hand, Job cannot see God. Verse 10. But he knows the way that I take. When he has tested me, I shall come forth as gold. And so Job says that, however, that God can see him. Job has searched for God, but he cannot see him, perceive him, behold him. However, he knows, he's confident that God can see him. God knows the way that he takes, his conduct, Job's conduct. Therefore, when God has tested or tried Job, Job is confident that he will come forth as gold. That is, his character will be found to be pure. His character, his conduct. Job uses the analogy of refinement of gold. The gold is melted, the unwanted metals are separated as dross, and the purified gold remains. After Job's trials, his conduct will be proven to be pure, and he will shine like refined gold. There's a passage in Zechariah 13 and 9. The idea of being grieved by various trials is also taught in 1 Peter 1, 6 to 9. But Zechariah 13:9 reads, I will bring the 1/3 through the fire, will refine them as silver is refined, and test them as gold is tested. They will call on my name, and I will answer them. I will say, this is my people, and each one will say, the Lord is my God. In 1 Peter 1, 6 to 9, the apostle said to his brethren, to fellow Christians, in this you greatly rejoice, though now for a little while, if need be, you have been grieved by various trials, that the genuineness of your faith, being much more precious than gold that perishes, though it is tested by fire, may be found to praise, honor, and glory at the revelation of Jesus Christ, whom having not seen you love, though now you do not see him, yet believing, you rejoice with joy inexpressible and full of glory, receiving the end of your faith, the salvation of your souls. And so here in Job 23 and 10, Job says, but God, he knows the way that I take. He knows my conduct, my conversation. He knows my character and behavior. When he has tested me, when God has tested me or tried me, I shall come forth as gold. And so he's confident that after he has went through these trials, that he will shine like refined gold. Verse 11. My foot has held fast to his steps. I have kept his way and not turned aside. Job reaffirms his integrity. His foot has held fast to God's steps. He has kept God's path. When he says his foot has held fast to God's steps, the part is put for the whole, the foot for the whole body. And so he has held fast to God's steps. He has not walked in the old ways, the old way which wicked men have trod, as was said by Eliphaz earlier in Job 22 and 15. Job says that he has kept and not turned away from God's way. God's way is his way. Verse 12, I have not departed from the commandment of his lips. I have treasured the words of his mouth more than my necessary food. Job says that he has not departed from the commandment of God's lips. These are commandments that have come from God's own mouth, his own lips. He has treasured the words of God's mouth more than his necessary food. People need food, but Job looked at the words from God's lips as more important than his necessary food. He obeyed God's commandments. The word necessary here in this passage is literally, according to the footnote, appointed portion. And so this portion appointed for him, his food, we might say daily bread in reference to the New Testament in the teachings of Jesus and his lesson on the model prayer. In verses 13 to 17, we see that Job, however, is afraid. Now he approaches God with bravery and courage. However, he is still afraid. In verses 13 to 17, verse 13, he says, but he is unique, and who can make him change? And whatever his soul desires, that he does. And so he says here in the text that God is unique. One. The Hebrew term rendered unique in this passage is predominantly one in the Old Testament. There is no one like God. Deuteronomy 6 and 4 and 5. There is one God. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength. In that passage, we see the Lord is one. And so in this passage, we could read it as, but God is one. He is unique. He goes on to say, who can make him change? Well, man may change. Job says that no one can make God change his will. He does what he desires. Whatever his soul desires, that he does. Verse 14. For he performs what is appointed for me, and many such things are with him. Job says that God does whatever he has appointed for him. Job does not understand the things that God appoints or plans for him, and he says that God has many other such plans which he cannot comprehend. After all, he is but a mortal man, and God is infinite in understanding. We see the faith of Job in these passages. Verse 15, therefore I am terrified at his presence. When I consider this, I am afraid of him. And so therefore Job is terrified at the presence of God. He still wants to seek him. He would love to He wants to be in his presence. He wants to go before him, but he's still afraid. When Job considers that God does whatever he desires, verse 13, and that God has appointed something for him that he does not understand, verse 14, then Job is afraid of God, verse 15. Verse 16, of course, from our study of the book of Job, all these things are happening, and Job doesn't know why they are happening. He thinks they're happening because of God. However, he is ignorant of these things. And now in the passage, he says in verse 16, for God made my heart weak, and the Almighty terrifies me. Job says that God made his heart weak with fear. He is afraid. The Almighty terrifies him. We ought to fear God, whether we speak of being afraid or revering him. We ought to fear God. The fear of God is the beginning of understanding. And verse 17, last verse of the chapter. Because I was not cut off from the presence of darkness, and he did not hide deep darkness from my face. Job has questions to ask. First, why did he not die before the presence of darkness? That is, before the coming of his suffering. And second, why did God not hide the deep darkness, the ordeal of his suffering, from his face? Job does not know why. He has these questions and more, but he still puts his faith in God. We hope that the lesson today has been helpful in better understanding this chapter of the book of Job. And Lord willing, we'll continue with our study. Thank you for being here.